Here's a headline that made my blood boil. Bear in mind the context before you read this. There's no money for anything, okay? We can't build bridges, we can't build pipelines, there's no money for Medicaid, there's no money for anything for you as your costs go up. Meanwhile, Trump aides struggle with how to spend $500 billion more on the military. It's like, I can't even hold all these billions. What do I even put it into? And look, I don't necessarily want to waste a lot of my limited remaining empathy on them, but it is a difficult challenge. I mean, we already spend $1 trillion a year on the military. I don't know what you spend an additional $500 billion on, and neither do the experts. Because bear in mind, President Donald Trump last month agreed to a roughly 50% funding boost sought by Pete Hegseth. Well, if Pete Hegseth thinks it's necessary, then you can take that right to the bar. But anyway, White House aides and defense officials have run into logistical challenges surrounding where to put the money because the amount is just so large, says the Washington Post. It's like, I don't know, do we buy more weapons? I mean, like, there's nobody to even carry them. Do we develop new technology, spaceships? It's just so much money. We already spend more than like the next 9 militaries combined. The next 9 biggest militaries, Russia and China and all of them combined. And they're gonna add in 500 billion extra dollars a year. 500 billion, then 500 billion, then 500 billion. Because right now, you're not safe. There's a Venezuelan right behind you right now. Did you know that? He's got a knife, watch out. Spending $900 billion after last year spending 860, 830 before that, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars has left us in 2026 on the verge of collapse. And if we don't increase it by 50%, we'll all die, JR. So we gotta help them out. We gotta figure out, I'm thinking lasers. I think probably we need lasers, I think. What do you think we should spend the money on?
I think maybe the next step is to replace all of these, fascist, white supremacist ICE and DHS agents in the streets, replace them with, robots. Make sure they can kill people quite efficiently. We can say, it wasn't a mental thing. It wasn't someone with any kind of biases. It was a robot that murdered your family member in the streets. Because honestly, those are always the next steps. We've invaded enough countries. We're making enough money off of stealing resources and displacing people and saying that there's making you safer. The next, as it always has been, is the American people. Anybody who speaks out against our extreme agenda and taking your money and wasting it is now an enemy of the state. He's been saying it since he was campaigning. So it's supposed to be turning inward on us next to spend our money on killing ourselves through their capabilities to do so. But think about this. There's this person, I'm not sure if it was a leak or if some administration official or some kind of staffer is proud to say that, or if they had a slip of the tongue when they're like, we're having trouble spending an extra $500 billion on the military. Why would you say that out loud? The middle fingers are so constant and prominent from these folks in this administration to the American people. They don't even realize anymore when they're doing it. They're like, this is standard operating procedure. We give you middle fingers, you get upset and we say that you're violent. That's the process. This is and then repeat it again the next time. They're willing to tell us that they're trying to find new ways to waste $500 billion. And then if you are short on your taxes or if you skirted your taxes and you made $50,000 in a year, they're coming for your ass. But they have absolutely no shame in telling you that they're looking to waste more of that money that they're gonna be hounding you about.
Look, I love our audience, but there are a lot of really dumb ideas. Putting it towards education, Ryu. No, there's no money for that. Healthcare in this economy, there's no money for that. Water treatment, pipelines, lead pipes. You guys are stupid. We don't have money for that. We need to protect the American people from fictional threats, not actual threats like lead in our water, like a lack of education, like a lack of affordable housing. Those are real threats and thus super boring and cringy to talk about. We need to talk about imaginary things, or more likely just $500 billion being routed into no bid contracts by corporations that are run by either friends of or indeed family members of the administration. That's what we need to put it into. And by the way, can you imagine if we had this headline ready to go? Well, first of all, it wouldn't matter because the hypocrisy doesn't matter. As we were told day after day that Trump and indeed Elon Musk have come up with, we need to manage waste. There's too much waste and fraud, and we're gonna be the responsible ones. Y'all are just spending money on crazy stuff. We need to cut. Did you know they spent $20,000 on a trans opera? I mean, they didn't, but let's pretend that they did. That's a big waste of money. And there's no money for $20,000 on an opera. We need to spend $500 billion on Jewish space lasers or something. I don't know. Imagine. I did a little bit of thinking. We'll move on a second, but you could revamp the entire transportation infrastructure of America. High-speed rail linking cities all over. Those are super expensive, right? Well, it's $500 billion every year. We could have high-speed rail everywhere. That would pay for half of the money they decided on a whim to cut from Medicaid early last year. Evidently, we did have the money. We just can't spend it on our health insurance. We spend it on shooting people abroad, and not even for our interests, mostly for Israel. Free higher education for every single kid in America goes without saying. That's a tiny fraction of this money. Every single kid would be able to go to any trade school they want, any university they want, any grad school they want, medical school, law school, whatever. We could train the next generation for a tiny fraction of that money. Obviously, we could build all of the affordable housing that we could ever need as a nation. We could likely do all of those things simultaneously. Or we could buy more bombers, we could buy more guns, we could whatever they're gonna waste it on. And then we're gonna find out when they can't even pass an audit yet again in a year and 2 years and 5 years that most of it was wasted and didn't actually go anywhere. But yeah, MAGA, thanks for putting the businessmen in charge, the responsible ones who care about fraud and waste and abuse.